Welcome to Two Brothers and an Idea. They call me Ferdinand, the bringer of balance, leader of many disciplines, and one of your hosts of Two Brothers and an Idea. I'm here with my co-host, Tetaun. What's going on, brother? How you doing?
You said my name, Tetaun. I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. It's always a pleasure to come on board with these conversations, these unique conversations. And so I'm looking forward to indulging and learning something. I think it's always good to learn. So I'm excited. What about yourself?
Oh, everything is going good. I'm just very appreciative that we're able to be here to lead in this capacity in these times that we're living in right now. And for the audience, last week what we talked about in episode 22 was a 7-year tribulation period. And in today's episode, we're going to be doing the part 2. We're going to go a little bit deeper, and we've also brought a couple of visual aids to help everybody have a little bit of information in connection to what we're talking about. And just so that everybody knows, we're using astronomical and astrological references to help make sense of what's happening with the 7-year tribulation period, and in addition to religious doctrine, right? So we're bringing a lot to the table, and we're going to kind of condense it to make it make sense, right? So Tetaun, when you think about this 7-year tribulation period, from what you've learned about it, right? Help me with where you are.
Well, traditionally, I've been raised or reared from a biblical context of what that looks like in the book of Revelation. And as we grow and as you mature and you learn more of what it is to understand in context, historically, what is written or what is prophesied, there's other parts of this that we have often left out. And it presents many questions, right? When you think about science, when you think about technology, when you think about the observance of the stars, as we relate that to astrology. And so for me, it's been a learning journey. I'm comparing and contrasting what is fact, what is true, and not so much in the way of being argumentative. I think it's always important that we be in a position that we're teachable. And I think with these types of conversations, being that it's a diverse group of thought and ideas, for me, it brought a lot of understanding, not only from a physical standpoint, but also from a spiritual aspect. And now you have a sense of truth with your urgency, and you don't have fear. I think we're driven with a lot of fear when we hear about these terms or these thoughts or these theologies or doctrines that we read about. And so I'm excited to learn more. I mean, I'm interested in observing how things are viewed and how things are connecting together.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think we share that as far as our younger years, learning biblical doctrine and pastors and preachers diving into Revelations. And this is how we've got the bulk of our information when we were younger concerning the 7-year tribulation period. And many people out there who are in our audience,
right,
they have received it in a similar way.
Right.
So that I think that the most interesting part of the 7-year tribulation period is that I'll be living through one. You read the Revelations and many parts of the Bible, and you thinking, oh, that's gonna happen a long time from now. That rapture gonna happen. So yeah, that's 50 to 100 years away, right? The 7-year tribulation, that's a long ways away, right? It's almost challenging to believe that 2025 is here. Well, Tetaun, we have a very special guest today, and one of my good friends, Tim Pop, right? I'm about to bring this brother to the stage.
All right.
What's going on, Tim? How you doing?
Yo, peace.
Man, I'm doing all right. It's good to be here with you guys. I always like the topics. It's always interesting and enlightening. So it's to be here and be part of it at all is a good thing. I don't know how much more I'm going to do than listen, but I definitely have opinions. I'm not
Well,
without opinions.
Tim, I'd be interested to know what your thoughts are on the 7-year tribulation period.
Well, I mean that's a big question. It's something that's been outlined. I mean, it's a great number in the Bible, recurring number that's in the Bible. Something that we're it's something that we're going to experience. It was illustrated in the past, based on previous books of the Bible, of course, and Revelations illustrates what those what the tribulation period is. So, but you guys are the experts on this topic.
Well, yeah, we have gone pretty deep on this one, and I think rightfully so, because there needs to be a group of people who are making sure that the people have knowledge on these different things that are happening. I could guarantee you a lot of people would have been really happy to have information about the pandemic ahead of time.
Oh, they
And
did. I'm kidding. Go ahead.
yeah, but I think that this is kind of like a duty to make sure that the people are as informed as possible before they step into a space where they've got to perform. When it comes down to preparation in an emergency, Tetaun, do me a favor and dive a little bit into that just for a second.
Well, we touched a little bit on that on last week, right? And I think one of the things that I found that was important based on the preparation is one, understanding the times that we're living in. I think a lot of times we're physically prepared, but we're not mentally prepared. So I think the mindset and the idea that there is the time is of an essence, right? The time is running short. So the preparation has to be that you have the knowledge and understanding that there's an urgency, but there's no fear. There's a planning, there's a being proactive instead of reactive, right? We don't want everybody in our family running around like a zombie and you've already infected. So the idea of ensuring what? One, understanding your resources. What are your resources in a moment where there's no power, there's no activity on the street? You want to make sure that the grocery store, the grocery stores are closed. So we got to think about food supply. We got to think about medicines, natural medicines, the ability to grow your food, understanding locations, localities, and map encompassing your location, because there's going to come a time where there'll be no devices, I believe, will not be utilized in terms of your iPhone, your iPad, and all those kind of cool things. So I think you have to understand what is important about safety, right? A lot of the things that I have observed over the years, we see in Hollywood and these projected images of fear and all the kind of things that are taking place. But I think it's important that you maintain a level of safety, accountability, all those important documents and things that are relevant to your family. You have to be able to keep those in a safe place as well. But I think one of the greatest things that people must prepare for is spiritually. Are you of the righteous? Where is your heart? Where are you with your family and what you understand it is for you to do in such a time as this? And so I think it's going to challenge a lot of biblical scholars who have had a pressed image in their mind of what this looks like, right? The revealing of what has been known as the Antichrist. What does that look like? What is the wars that are occurring in our government systems when they fail, our economic systems when they fail. So I think the preparation has to begin now. And observing the time and some of the things that have been displayed throughout history, we have to really understand that there is an urgency. And in our lifetime, we will see things that we never thought about. And what we've probably thought that Marvel and, Michael Bay and the Transformers and all those things were just fantasies. So that's my thought on it. But I think it's just important to be able to take this information, research it for me as I'm continually doing, and making the proper steps to move forward.
I agree completely. When it comes down to preparing, understand that this is a spiritual war that has been happening for a very long time, but it is about to manifest in a totally different way.
Right.
Multiply it by 1,000, multiply it by 100,000, multiply it by 1,000,000, and then you'll have a better understanding of what's about to take place. All right, so understand this. All right, last week we went over what this 7-year tribulation is. It is the planet Uranus that is doing its rounds. It orbits the sun just like every other planet, but Uranus makes a stop, or not a stop, but it transits through Gemini every 84 years. And every 84 years, we have a certain amount of rebellious type of spiritual energy that hits the earth. And there's nobody who can hide from it. It happens every single 84 years. Last week, I told everybody on the podcast, punch in 2026 in your calculator and subtract 84. And every time you subtract 84, whatever answer that you get, and you just want to keep going all the way back through history. If you feel like doing this as an exercise, Google those time periods and see what has happened during those time periods. It's very important for each person to have an understanding on this. Let me bring our guest up for a second. I think he's got something to share.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit to the thinking, and just trying to follow the path without getting too distracted and have things go off the rails. Sometimes have conversations that can happen pretty easily. But just to stay on topic, but add something in as far as the tribulation period, at least in the version of the Bible I'm most familiar with, which is the King James version of the NIV, it follows the same thing as King James with more regulated English language. But in those Bibles, it's very clearly said that we will never know when, we will never know how, but there will be signs, there will be indications. So if you take a look at what in the past, you have the little cartoon character with the guy holding up the sign, the end is near, and it's meant to be funny, but the fact is that one of those times it's going to be accurate and the end will come, but it's all about readiness. Readiness is in a spiritual sense. Readiness is in how we prepare our hearts and minds, and preparation for what would be, in this context, the second coming of the Lord. To some people, it's first coming if you look in the Jewish Bible, but it's still the same story. It's still the same thing. And it is a matter of preparedness, and it is a matter of paying attention to the signs. Now, the signs are what I think Ferdinand's going to be going into a little bit more, and that has to do with our indication of guidance, map wise, and where things are. That would be to where the planets change and they cross over these transit points, and we see these changes. Well, that gives us a map of what's happening with astronomical bodies here in our own solar system, and the connection of what does that do to us as people. Now, if we're paying attention to the signs, we can see these things coming ahead of time. Now you can make a decision whether you want to accept that or not. In the Bible and in religion and faith, it says be ready at all times, but be aware of the signs as they come. These are the signs. What you're talking about are the signs, and if you're aware and if you're connected and righteous enough, I think those signs become that much more obvious.
Absolutely. Thank you for adding that. It is very important for us to be focused on preparation. Super important for us to be paying attention to the signs and listening to each other, moving in unity, so that we can educate each other. So I think that I'm gonna give a real quick recap of last week for those who are listening this week, so they have an understanding of where we're going. Because Uranus is very important in this conversation. It's the planet of rebellion within astrology, and it takes 84 years to orbit the sun. Well, why is that important? That helps us to understand when these periods of rebellion are going to start. So it's this 7-year period of rebellion, this 7-year tribulation, is Uranus in Gemini. Gemini is the constellation that's symbolic of communication. Right. So that's very important when we're talking about the state level communication. We're talking about husband and wife communication, brother and sister, merchant and customer, and so on and so on. Right. All of these different relationships will be affected at the communication level, at the cognitive thinking level. Right. And it happens every single 84 years. It creates revolution. It creates rebellion in multiple parts of the world. But in places like America, this time around, this will be ground zero of what goes down during that 7-year tribulation period. And the key dates that I tell everybody to focus on is July 2025, July 2026, May 2028, and March 2030. Now, the last 3 dates, the reason why I gave you those is because that's when Uranus and Mars have a 0-degree conjunction in Gemini. And the very first date, July 2025, is when Uranus enters Gemini. Every single time this happens, we have war in multiple parts of the world, or maybe one part of the world, and then there's a lot of different nations that's connected to that war, and then we have a lot of other things that happen. We have wars in between. You know, so there's a lot of people like, oh yeah, you know, we have wars all the time. Yes, we do, but these are different. These are full-scale revolutions. Whole regime changes happen during these specific types of time periods. And now we're in the age of Aquarius, as well as a matriarchal age. This one's going to be different.
You know, for people down in the hall, downstairs, around the corner, right? As we're listening to some of these conversations, as they were listening to some of these conversations, how do you guys distinguish? You know, because there's a Christian way of looking at things from the book of Revelation and how it all ties together outside of the astrology, observing the stars, the planets. So I'm curious to know, how do you marry these conversations together to give a full understanding of what you gentlemen are speaking about?
That's a really great question, Teton. And Tim, I'm gonna come to you in just a second because I know you itching to give something. But how do we marry them? We marry them with numbers. We marry them with mathematics. We marry them with references that are written in code. But we have to be able to properly discern the breakdown of that code. So there's very specific codes in Revelations, like 1260. Or 1240. I forget which one, but it adds up to, I believe, 3.5 years, right? And then there's there's the 7 that's in there, right? The 7 is normally maybe not normal, right? But the 7 is aligned with the 7 inner planets in astrology, and this is what just about everything in our society has been built on, and including those 12 constellations that we talk about in astrology. So the connections between the religious space or the religious doctrine and astrology or astronomy is planets and numbers. It's vibrational frequencies. It's also animals and the spirit that they may be connected to in the spiritual symbolic space, right? And these things are written in code so that only those who truly understood the science could decode it. For the people down the hall.
Yeah, because if you think about it, Christians or those of that belief understand this is we stay away from astrology. Thou shalt not, thou shalt not, thou shalt not. This is evil. It's of the devil. Leave science alone. We're waiting for Christ to crack the sky so we can be raptured and taken up. I'm sure you've heard these narratives.
Yeah. So the thing that always got me was, I mean, why there just seemed to be this extreme need, this extreme draw to try to separate these things, when in fact it's all there's a synergy all the way across the entire board, and that synergy is something that that you can see a connection from science to basic religion and faith, and all the way through astrology in past and history, the way people historically looked at things, the way they could tell the weather, the change in time of the year, the different things that went in the guidance that was all there. It was all a connection. Everything was all together all the time. And it was, if you look at it now and you see what's happening out there in the world today, and you see, okay, we'll just say climate change. Well, one thing that you can count on, what in nature never varies, that would be change. So there's always change. Now we've got, and we see and we recognize changes, but those changes are becoming more and more extreme. You take, if you look at and you combine all of the schools of thought, from religion through science, and what we see out there, you can take a look at planetary alignments and so on, which are outlined and detailed in astrology. It's not about, we're here, let me look at my horoscope today. Oh, it looks like I'm going to have a good money day. No. We're talking about old study science towards what astrology meant to us as human beings. Now, if you follow that and you tie that together with what we know of science today, we know something that's very important is pole shifts. And these are things that make dramatic changes. And it's not something that it's some kind of a scientific myth that poles shift, and it reads like, oh, the poles are going to reverse. They don't really reverse, but they do dramatically change. And that dramatically changes what happens on this earth. But we also see the smaller, the more minor changes, and some of them are more significant than others, is with the effect of gravitational pull on the sun, whether you're talking about if it's just the gravitational effect, or if it's something where it throws off solar flares and things like that, which also throws neutrinos and things at the earth. These things affect every living body on the earth, including us as people and including us as unborn children. When we come into the earth, we're here, and you have to take a look at some of the stuff. Is pretty compelling about how close it is to defining human characteristics. Ferdinand did my what's that called,
your birth chart?
Yeah, is it the birth chart? Is that what it's got? All this. And you take a look at, if you take a look at it, and he says, well, he draws the lines, it goes here and here, and he explains everything the way it's all going, and then you look at it at the bottom, it's like, well, all right, so now I know you a little bit, so I know some of this stuff is already there, but I'll just go through it and start picking it out for what it is. And it's just start describing, okay, this is it's kind of a person that you are, what you're drawn to, what kind of people are drawn to you, what kind of effect you have of people around you. Are you introverted or extroverted? And these things, they lined up. And the funny thing is, then he did Elena's chart, and it was like 6 months. It's like a mirror image, but we're both water. We're both water signs, and it's amazing how much we are drawn to water. Both of us are just drawn to water. Every chance we get, we're in water.
So
love going to oceanfront. I mean, who doesn't like going to the beach? But you take a look at repetitions and patterns, and those patterns, those things are things that are happening. They're things that are happening for real in our life, in our day-to-day life, in our day-to-day existence.
Okay.
So that combined with all the things that we see on with what I pay a lot of attention to the science of things. I pay a lot of attention to astronomy and quantum physics and these things and these relationships. That's an excellent diagram.
So I have one more question, gentlemen, and I think this is probably one that will require some real good thought, right? So 47 BC, Julius Caesar changed the calendar from 13 to 12 months, and so when you look at the Julian versus the Gregorian calendar and look at where we are now, should it not be that maybe some of these signs are a few months off, a month off? So, for example, if I'm a September at 9 months, if the Gregorian calendar the calendar was actually changed for 13 months, then technically I should be a Libra, right?
Well, now tell me if I'm right about this, Ferdinand. What I would say is you got the transit that's happening with the immovable background. That's why you're in Sagittarius or whatever. That passage, that's self-correcting. It's automatic. It's the transit, the movement of the celestial bodies across something that's fixed in the sky. These things that don't move for millions of years. And it's, we're obviously within any period of time, our tiny little blip on this planet, so would you say that's close? I'm just guessing.
I would say that that both of y'all have some great points. Tetaun, I would say that you're right on point with the changes that have happened from Western astronomers and Western leadership over their astronomy departments on kind of making a shift in what time was. So yes, we definitely
the first day of the week was Sunday versus the Sabbath, which was Saturday.
Yes.
So does that change how we see our calendars?
I would say that it definitely should change how we see our calendars, but how we see the celestial space should be based on observation, right? So we can actually go and look for ourselves to see where these heavenly bodies are located. One of the things that I do want to touch on is the neutrinos and the different energies that the sun is putting out. I want to put a strong focus on rays of light, and when those rays of light hit atoms. So, Tim, kind of give me what your theory is on when rays of light hit atoms. What happens to them?
Well, I mean, photon is both. It's photon's a physical thing, so it's going to have an effect. So if you've got an increase of photons based on change in gravitational pull and flaring of the sun and those kinds of things, which is dramatically affected by planetary alignments. Of course, the biggest planet being the most significant, but when they align, it's even more so. And those alignments change the direction and the way those work. Talk about neutrinos now. Neutrinos go through everything. You can have a neutrino, you can send it from here right through to the opposite end of the Earth, and it goes in between all the little spaces of all the atoms between here and there. It's not affected by that because of the size and power of it. But what you're talking about, there's absolute effects in the sun when you see those planetary changes and the gravitational changes that happen as you put multiple bodies together and you increase that mass more and more, and you get that alignment in a certain way. It's gonna change the way the sun, the way the light comes at you, and the way the light hits you. And it's different from this time as it is to 5 months from now when those alignments are all different.
Absolutely. When and I brought this up in our last conversation. I'm just kind of bouncing back and forth between those the episode 22 and episode 23. But in episode 22, I talked a little bit about the moon and its gravitational pull on water. Thanks, Tim, for correcting me earlier, because I was talking about a magnetic pull on water, right? But either way, it happens at a higher clip with the moon based on the moon being more illuminated by the sun, right? So one of the things that I like all everybody out there to think about is take everything that Tim talked about with the birth chart and the accuracy of describing a person's behavior and personality using these planetary alignments to explain it, right? Well, why? Because we're built of the same exact minerals and elements within ourselves. So we have a direct connection to Uranus. We have a direct connection to the sun, a direct connection to the moon, a direct connection to Mercury, Venus, Mars, and whatever other planets that I'm not naming, right? But the point that I want to bring to everyone is understanding that everything in our existence is tied together by cords. Well, why? Because everything is the same. What we're made of is a whole bunch of atoms. Well, here goes one big atom that we go outside and look at every single day. And this is what ties us to the energies of these planets. And it is so significant that every single 84 years, we have full-blown revolution in multiple parts of the world. And we need to be prepared for it, because this 7-year tribulation, which is going to last from July 2025 until, I don't remember exactly which month, but in 2023, it comes to a close. But it's going to be some heavy points in between that we need to be aware of.
2033?
Absolutely.
Right. Yes. And there's with the astronomical, talking about, I mean, it's scientific movement. You see the mapping that's put together for what's happening in our solar system. The talking about the pull of different things. You're saying the light. So if you have in a full moon, why would that be more significant? Well, you take a look at the way the alignment has to be. In order for it to be a full moon, it's got to, the sun position has to be where you have the entire face of the moon is lit up. So you have an increased, not only an increased pull from gravity, but also because of the way the alignment is. So you've got it pulling from two separate sources is where that connection makes sense to me when you're talking about in an astrological point of view.
Absolutely. Yeah, you got something, Tetaun?
Well, I wanted to go back. I was listening, and you were saying every 84 years, correct?
Yes.
So I wanted to go back 84 years ago and understand the climate, because of course neither one of us was born 84 years ago, but during that time was actually 85 years ago was World War I. So I'm curious, have you done the research and looked at 84 years prior as we talk about Uranus and Mercury? What took place during that time that's relative to connect us to 84 years forward in 2025?
I'm glad that you asked that question, Tetaun. As I was saying before to all of our guests out there, thank y'all very much for being here with us today. We're trying to be as informative as possible and get the truth out to everybody. So please comment, please share, please like and love this conversation. Thank you for supporting us. But Tetaun, to answer your question, every 84 years, help me with the question one more time, please.
Well, you said, now go back and quote what you said about every 84 years, right? There's a rebellion that arises, that occurs, right? And you made mention about how that energy impacts our societal.
84 years ago, right?
Right.
Okay.
Let's go back 84 years ago, World War I, which was actually 85 years ago. So let's go back 84 years ago and kind of explore some of those events.
Absolutely. So if y'all got your calculator, throw in 2026 and then minus 84. It's going to bring you to 1942. During that time period, we had World War II happening, right? D-Day happened a year prior to it. Okay, December 7th, 1941, I believe, was D-Day. Now, no, excuse me, that was Pearl Harbor. I'm tripping. Pearl Harbor. 1941, December 7th, 1941 is the Pearl Harbor attack, right? Well, this is how Uranus in Gemini works. Okay, now let's go back 84 more years. Okay, that's going to bring us back to, I believe, 1858, and around that time we've got the Civil War brewing. Okay, and next thing that follows is Emancipation Proclamation, a whole new change in how the nation was moving, right, after that point. All right, so let's go back another 84 years. Well, that brings us back to a whole regime change right here on these lands, on these shores. We call it the Revolutionary War and the Declaration of Independence. Every 84 years, we have these these revolutions, but all it is it's spiritual revolution, it's spiritual rebellion that happens because of how the planet Uranus works. Now let's not just talk about Uranus in Gemini. Let's talk about where Uranus is right now. Okay, Uranus right now is in Taurus. Taurus is earth energy, it's spiritual femininity, it's Taurus is about values, right? Well, look at the rebellion and the sudden changes and the unexpected things that have happened in the last 6.5 years within those realms of our life, within earth energy. So that's kind of like how we eat, how we have recreation, right? We've had a lot of sudden changes. We've had a lot of unexpected things. There's been a lot of rebellion of thought within that space, within the spiritual femininity, a lot of rebellion of thought. We've had a rise in what LGBT has been able to achieve in the political space, the religious space, and so many other spaces, the academic space, the space of sports, right? This is how Uranus works. Revolution within values, revolution within femininity, right? Look at the feminist movement. Look at the LGBT movement. When you look at femininity that has been moving in unexpected ways, sudden changes that a lot of people may or may not have been ready for. And this is what Uranus does in Taurus. And then it does very specific things in each constellation that it can be in. But once it gets into Gemini, all hell breaks loose. Now, I want to bring something else to the stage real quick. So when we talk about this time being different, I want to be very clear about that, because I consistently talk about processional energy, but I want everybody to have a clearer understanding of what I'm talking about. So as you can see right here, we've got a we've got the great year. I'm sorry, I was having trouble right there with that one. All right, so with the great year is 25,920 years. Well, what is that? That's one full revolution of the polar region of the Earth in its wobble. Okay, so obviously one full revolution at the equator, that's 24 hours. But on that polar region, we're talking about a whole lot of years, nearly 26,000 years. Well, just like everything else, there's a duality. There's positive and there's negative. There's male and the female principle. There's that gender principle and everything. In the great year, it has the same thing, but we call it the patriarchal half and we call it the matriarchal half. That vernal equinoctial point, which we just crossed, well, that marks the start of a new matriarchal period. Plus, it marks the start of the age of Aquarius. This is very, very significant when we talk about this specific 84-year period where we're going to be dealing with this 7-year tribulation. Well, we're dealing with it now in the age of Aquarius, and we're dealing with it with a heightened amount of spiritual femininity that's just been thrown into the atmosphere. And a lot of people don't really know how to handle that. So what are we looking at? Because of where we are in this energy of this great year, at the beginning of a new great year, just coming out of the age of Pisces, well, we're looking at a war of sex. We're looking at a war of You know, you stepped on my Jordans versus you didn't step on my Jordans. We're looking at a war of LGBT versus people who have maybe did negative things against them, black versus white, haves versus have-nots. And we're possibly, in America, we're possibly also looking at another nation coming over here and deciding to take out, you know, how they feel on us. Keep in mind, we've been trampling on the rest of the world for a very, very long time. But because we had control of the currency, well, we were able to do that. But we don't have that control of the currency anymore. We're in danger.
We're losing it. We're the currency control. The dollar being the greatest monetary power on the planet that is under siege right now, and it's something that we're seeing get pulled away faster and faster, and it's almost looks inevitable. Although I mean we could still wind up coming out on top, but there's still going to be a whole lot of tribulation that goes along with it, which fits again, we're going back to the same thing. It's written in books, it's written in the Bible, it's written in history, it's written in science. It's, you know, we've got all these things that are all coming together, and it's all going to happen together. It's all going to happen at the same time.
You know, this is it's a lot to absorb, right? For many. A lot of times, you know, when you have to replace or just put on pause some of the things that you've learned and be able to discover and connect the dots as you gentlemen are doing as we talk about this tribulation period. I wanted to inquire a little bit about your transition, not so much what Ferdinand has said, but to really understand, Tim, can you talk about, from your perspective, how do you connect your audience with some of this information and empower them to be prepared and ready?
Well, I suppose that's something that I probably should be talking about more, but people who know me, I talk to, we have very similar conversations. There's a lot of people that are already like-minded. So most of the people I talk to are like-minded, but when somebody doesn't understand, I do tend to do what I can to educate. And that education is just a matter of what can you do for preparedness. And I know you guys touched on this last week because I was paying attention. Was I there? Anyway, we were talking about the absolute number one thing that you want to do as a prepper or even as a non-prepper, but you just want to be able to at least handle, I mean, let's talk about it, the minimum 72 hours. You should really have a month's worth, but 72 hours worth of food. You should be able to say I can make it through that with all of my loved ones. I know that Ferdinand, I know you say a lot longer than that. I happen to agree with you. I personally have 30 days myself. Oh, did I just post that? I guess I'm gonna have to protect my front yard now. Anyway, it's I mean, I laugh about it because it's not it's something that you want to find humor in, because you sort of don't want to have that. You don't want to feel the pain of what is so potentially real going to happen here. But all we can do is prepare for it. Be righteous, live righteously, be right to one another. Understand that everybody's got their own belief system, and that belief system should be something that's respected. And that what we've got to do really is connect with one another and be here and survive things that come across, whatever happens, come across and survive it together. And that's, I mean, and Ferdinand and I talk about that all the time. It's not about black and white, man. The people that want control, they want control over every one of us worker bees out here. We're ants working on a hill, carrying things around, and they want us all doing that. And it's not a black and white thing. It's not about the Jews being persecuted. It's not about, we're all in this together right now, right here. And we need to band together for this thing.
That's a fact. This definitely is about unity. Hey, Tetaun, did you have something to add?
Well, there's a lot that I wanted to add, but I think I think he's covered enough. I wanted to just basically, because a lot of times when we talk about it from a biblical context, and when you look at the scripture, for example, Daniel, and how Daniel called astrologers, he called all the enchanters together, and then you look at certain passages of scripture that people and pastors will understand that, you know, there's no biblical justification for astrology, right? And so I just appreciate the course of conversation to be able to get people to understand the connecting or the intersection of the conversation. And so that's where I wanted to continue to explore. But I'm all game, man. This is good dialogue, and I think it's worth listening to.
I really appreciate that, you know, and for the crowd out there, for the audience out there, thank y'all very much for coming in and being a part of the conversation. Please continue to comment, to share, to love, and to like, and tell as many people as possible about this conversation, because we're putting out knowledge that's going to help you be prepared for what is to come. Right, the planet Uranus will enter Gemini in July 2025, and then it will retrograde for, I don't know, 8-9 months or something like that. But in 2026 is full blown in Gemini by July 4th, 2026. Y'all can go verify the date if you like. I can pull the book up again, and so y'all can see it for yourself. All right, here goes the book. Feel free to get a screenshot. All right, the New American Ephemeris on page, I'm going to tell you the exact page too. All right. So on page, well, it doesn't have no page numbers. For July 8th, is it July? No, that's 2026. We need 2025. All right, July 2025. So Uranus goes into Gemini on July 8th, 2025. There it is right there. And it might be hard for some of y'all to understand this because you might not know the symbols, but Uranus is this planet right here, that one. And if you look right there, 0 degrees Gemini on July 8th. Okay. So this will start July 2025. And it's kind of in a way already has started. And it will end in 2023. And I'll tell you the exact date on 2023 that Uranus exits.
2023?
What's up?
You said 2023?
2033 is when Uranus exits Gemini. And I'm going to tell you the exact date right now that it will exit Gemini and go into Cancer. All right. So the exact date that it exits Gemini is May 23rd, 2033. And there it is right there. Let me put myself back on the big screen, and that way everybody can see it if they want to screenshot it. There it is right there, black and white. Okay, and that's straight out of the Ephemeris. Okay. You might not subscribe. You might not subscribe to astrology, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But reality that I think everyone should face is there's a correlation here between the planet Uranus going into the constellation of Gemini, and every time that it's happened, every single time, there's been some kind of major fight between nations, and or nations having fights within themselves. And this has happened for as far back in human history as anybody can look to find. And for Ferdinand, what my theory is it's connected to light, right? So just like the moon, the Uranus is connected to light bouncing off of it and hitting our atmosphere. Now, you know, it may take me some years to prove this, but if it happens with the moon, then I think that it's only makes sense for us to look at it possibly happening with every other planet and every other celestial body that's out there. All these different stars, light is bouncing off of them and it's hitting us, and it's traveling pretty fast if you looked into the speed of light, you know. So that's pretty intense for us to be getting hit over and over again with all these different types of intensities of light, different degrees of polarity of light, and to see how it affects us.
Well, and one of the things, you know, that it may seem like it's a little bit off topic and we haven't really covered this, directly, certainly not in this format. Ferdinand and I have talked about this quite a lot because my favorite discipline of study is quantum physics. It's quantum theory, but you don't have to be a scientist to have heard words like dark matter. There are so many things that we can't see, that we cannot possibly understand because we're not capable to. We live within this realm of 3 dimensions. We move forward and backward, up and down, left and right. Those are 3 dimensions. 4 if you want to include time, but let's just take time out of it. My idea is by the time you get into the higher dimensions, that time doesn't exist anyway. So we'll just take that out of the equation. If you take a look at even just one more dimension, add one more dimension to the equation, the 4th dimension, then we can't understand any of it. You can sort of guess, and there's movies that have a couple of different ideas about what extra dimensionality might look like and so on. But the fact is, we can't understand with our 3-dimensional minds. And now I think it's exponential. I think that change is exponential, and that you're looking at the 4th dimension is not just adding a dimension. It's actually an exponential change. It's one. So one more dimension is 3 times 3. It's in complexity. It's like what would be 9. In complexity, it's a level of 9. And then you take that to the next step and the next step and the next step. Mathematically, quantum physics, go look it up. It's out there. It's proven mathematically that there's at least 10 dimensions that exist. We can't even see number 4. We can't even see that. There's plenty of illustrations that the largest amount of mass in the universe is unseen, is unknown. It's called dark matter. It probably has a lot to do with these unknowable dimensions.
Well, Tim, when you say that we're not able to see those higher level dimensions, I do think that you're correct about the vast majority of people. But I do believe that there are people on this earth, there's a very small percentage, less than 1%, who are accessing those levels. The ancient ancestors, they access those levels with ease. This is part of the reason why the Dogon tribe was able to tell scientists about various star systems out there that they couldn't even see until probably less than 100 years ago. Not the Dogon tribe, but that science.
Some of that's visionary.
What'd you say?
Some of that is visionary. It's visions.
Yes.
Visions and dreams. It comes to you in your visions and your dreams. And there's ways that you can stimulate that. And those are very, very real pathways into that level of thinking. And if you want to have an understanding, you can go. There's therapists that'll help see you through that kind of a journey.
Right.
And I'm not going to lie, I've had a couple of journeys like that myself, and it's made it very clear what is the reality of this idea. It's not because I've had these visions. It's because it's mathematically sound, because it's scientifically sound. It's I guess really, without going too deep, we may do that in black and white podcast, or another edition of this. I don't want to get too far into it, but the idea is that we don't even know what we don't know. So here, when you take a look at the effect, and I never was I was never an astrology person. I read them for fun. I read sometimes I would read every single one of them, the whole path of it, and go, hey, that's me. Oh, that's me. No, this one's me. I'd get down to mine and go, well, that's pretty close, actually. and whatever, it's just, but it's because you see it, you recognize it, and you want to believe that there's something else that's out there that has some kind of say, or at least a prediction on what's going to happen in our lives for any given day. But I'll say it again. It was going through and doing that birth chart with you, Ferdinand, and then doing Elena's, and then looking at the parallels. And then, even though you knew me pretty well, because we've been talking for quite a long time, but even though you knew me pretty well, there's a lot of things that came up that were not really things that you could know from, because you've known me for decades. It's these are things like, that, I mean, those alignments work. And there are differences with other people that where it doesn't connect. It doesn't make the same. It's not where it's universal, like reading Sunday's horoscopes and just having some fun with it. This is something where there's actual viable impact. You go, well, okay, well, why is this? So then, as a scientist, I mean, I say I'm a scientist. My father was a bona fide scientist, and he's the one that raised me. He's the one that gave me the interest in it. Anyway, I'll go head to head with most people about science. I have no problem with that. Now, do I have a degree in science? Well, yeah, a small degree, but that doesn't matter. It's life study. It's life experience. So anyway, that aside, the things I say are real. They're all verifiable. You can go on the internet and look it all up yourself. But the point is, when Ferdinand started showing me these things, I had the same skeptic mind, and I am very much a skeptic. My history even comes from Southeast Missouri, and Missouri, as you know, a lot of people know, it's the show me state. Well, how perfect for a skeptic, have your heritage come from the show me state. So I'm always skeptical about these things. And when it comes to something like that, I don't believe anything. I need to see something that backs it up. And there is absolutely no question in my mind that there's a connection from one thing to the other. And then when I started looking into it and seeing, oh my gosh, gravitational pull, look at the effect of all these different pieces that come off of the sun, much more than the photons that give you a nice tan in the summertime. It's far, far beyond that. From the neutrinos and the different effect of reflection off of other celestial bodies, heavenly, meaning within our neighborhood bodies, and what kind of effect can we have if there's a light reflection that's coming off there and impacting us at the same time that the sun's light that is impacting us, at the same time that the moon reflection is hitting us. Those all work on different levels. They work on different planes. Nice hand. They work on different elements. They work on things that we can see and understand. But they also, if they're working on levels of things that we can see and understand, they're also working on things that we cannot see and that we're incapable to understand. We're the flea on the back of a dog, going, hey, this is the world, man. This is it. The fact is, there's a lot more to it. And we have to accept the fact that we don't know what we don't know.
Right.
I'll stop talking. I can do this for hours.
Well, I think this has been a very extraordinary conversation. I think a lot of what you all have shared, I think it gives a lot of validity to the fact-based, right? Because again, being able to talk about this in the manner that we're talking about it is a little different than the typical, waiting for the sky to fall or waiting for somebody to take you up after all that has happened. You heard the stories, the market of beasts, you heard the stories about cash cannot buy or sell, and all the fear that is wrapped around the end time or the book of Revelation. I don't sit across this chair, Ferdinand, and my good friend Tim, as a subject matter expert. As I sit here, I'm learning, I'm listening, and observing. So I appreciate this moment, part 2, as we talked about the 7-year tribulation period. So you guys have done an excellent job, to my understanding, to be able to compare and contrast what one belief is based on what astrology is, and be able to take science and spirituality and religion and be able to put them together so they all can fit. So good way.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, it's very important for us to have the whole. Many times we walk through life with a piece of the pie, not
Right.
understanding that that is an illusion. Without the whole, we are lost. We're wandering in the wilderness. Tim, I really want to thank you for coming on the show today. Really appreciate it. You came to the table with some super important information, and definitely something I want to dive a little deeper in with you in the future. But thank you for coming today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. I'm glad we could do this together.
Awesome. Thank you. So with everything that Tim brought to the table, and with the input from you, Teton, I really think that the audience, they have a powerful pieces of information to use for preparation, to know what to do, because you definitely need to have your location where you're going to go. You definitely need to have your food supply. Tim was suggesting 72 hours. I definitely think you need to have 72 hours right now. But I recommend that you have a 90-day supply for each person in your family that's going to be a part of your camp in your safe house location. I recommend your safe house location be out in the woods somewhere. You want it to be as remote as possible. When the fighting breaks out, the people who are in cities are going to be very vulnerable. Those who are in the country areas are going to have a larger amount of safety, in my opinion, as long as there's no bombs that are especially like nuclear. But if it's small arms fire mostly, we're looking at the people who are out in them woods. They've got a shack out there. They've got an underground
Yeah.
bunker. They've got something out there in that wooded area. They're giving themselves an added level of safety, right? But on top of all of that, hop into Ephesians 6. This isn't a joke. I'm not a Bible thumper. What I know is that in that chapter, it tells you about putting on the armor of God. And if you want to make it if you want to make it past 2033, you're more than likely going to have put that on for the entire time, or you're going to have put it on at a point where you might be staring down the barrel of a gun, or you might be staring at some cupboards that are completely empty, right? Or you might be dealing with a situation where a family member has been separated from you and you don't know how to fix the situation. There's no authorities you can call. I'm telling you right now, this is the time to prepare. You are not in a state of emergency once uh, Uranus goes into Gemini. You're in a state of emergency right now. And if you use it that way and you start dedicating 15 to 30 minutes a day to your preparation, you will give you and your family a chance. Make no mistake about it. There's no running from this. There's no parts of the world that you're going to be able to move to. Oh, you know what? The United States is out of control, and it is. So I'm going to move to Mexico, or I'm going to move to Taiwan, or I'm going to move to Brazil. Listen, there's no place on the earth where you're going to be able to hide from this. This is 7 years of a rebellious type of spirit, spiritual energy that will hit this earth. It will hit the animals. It will hit the plants. It will hit the people. It will hit the water. It'll hit the air. It's going to hit everything. And we're going to get through this best, in my opinion, together. And those who decide they're going to stick with that divide and conquer mentality, that's what's about to fall. Those who are thinking about stealing from other people, they're going to loot and they're going to do all kinds of crazy stuff during this time. That type of energy is going to fall. What's going to stand and move forward with an iron scepter of power and take the morning sun will be those who endure to the end and hold on to what they have. And all I'm doing right now is quoting Revelations 2:24 through 29. Go read it
Revelation, man.
What'd you say?
I said it's Revelation.
Yeah, it's a revelation. It's a reveal. I highly recommend that you go read this material. Everybody out there, I'm gonna make a banner real quick. All right, I recommend that you go and you Google this. Okay, Google Uranus and Gemini. Listen, I'm telling you right now, don't believe nothing Ferdinand said. Don't believe anything Tim Pop said. Don't believe anything that Teton said. Just take everything that we said and go to Google, type it in, hit enter, and then come back if you feel like it and post a comment or something. Be like, hey man, I looked into this or that, and I ain't find nothing. Okay, all right, well, understood. Then there might be a bunch of other people who I looked into that, and man, everything that y'all said was true. That was facts. That was accurate. And then you started preparing. And when things got bad, you was ready. When COVID, I told this story last week. I'm gonna conclude with this. I told this story last week. I didn't know that the COVID pandemic was going to happen, but in October or November of 2018, I was standing outside of my front yard, and I just felt something in the pit of my stomach. Couldn't really explain what it was, what was going on. I just didn't know. But I heard the voice in my head say, "Prepare." And the way that the voice was said, this was one of them voices you just don't you don't ignore. You listen to this one. And I did. I spent the next year and a half preparing, and I didn't even know what was going to happen. I just knew something was going down soon. And my family was prepared for COVID. My family was prepared for the pandemic. We earned more money during the pandemic. We were healthy during the pandemic. Our children and us were together in a safe environment during the pandemic. We didn't have as many needs to go to the grocery store. We had a whole bunch of food growing in the front yard during the pandemic. Well, why? Because I listened to the voice inside, and I allowed spirit to guide me, right? So spirit has guided me to warn every single one of you, to let you know that there are some heavy days, some uncertain days that are on the horizon. And if you choose to walk in righteousness, you will put the goat's blood over your door as Pharaoh's curse comes down the pipeline. If you choose to grow and put away food in places that don't need electricity to be refrigerated, to be stored, you're putting the goat's blood over your door when Pharaoh's curse comes down the pipeline. If you choose to learn topographic maps, land navigation, protractors, compasses, pace count for distance, now you're setting yourself up to be fully prepared for what is about to happen. Those who don't do these things, all I can say is pray. Have some great affirmations that you use that will help guide you. Guns ain't gonna get you through this. I don't care how many guns you got. Don't even matter. You could have a Rambo arsenal. Not gonna get you through this. No, because if you run out of food, you're gonna disarm. You're gonna give away all them guns just for one plate of food, just for one scoop of mashed potatoes and gravy, with some green beans and some fried chicken. That's what they're gonna serve you. They're gonna serve you some fried chicken, and it's probably gonna be some chickens that was grown in a lab, and it ain't gonna be real mashed potatoes. But you're gonna trade all them guns for them fake mashed potatoes. So you might want to start putting away food now. And if you put away more than enough food, maybe what happens is nothing. Maybe Ferdinand is 100% wrong, right? And you just have a whole bunch of extra food that you more than likely didn't even pay for because you was able to grow it. Now you just eat that food. But if Ferdinand's right, if I'm right, and you don't have that food, you're going to be at the mercy of the United States government. And the last time we was in a situation like this, they didn't do too well with a bunch of our citizens. Go and look up what happened to the Japanese Americans after Pearl Harbor was bombed. Go look that up. Go see what they did to them Japanese Americans right here on this soil, so you can understand what your government is willing to do to you if they feel like you might be a threat, or if they feel like they need to, quote unquote, help you. So y'all be blessed. Thank y'all very much for coming today. It's been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much, Tetaun. I'm really thankful to Tim Pop for coming through, a great friend. Tim and I, we got a long history together. We served in combat together and everything. But yes, everybody out there, if you need help, get in touch with me. The links are in the description. Get in touch with us. Make sure you and your family are prepared, because once everything goes down, there ain't going to be too many people who can help you. The time to get help is right now.
Well, good friend, I know we ended last time, right, with Ephesians.
Oh, no, we finished last time with Revelations 2:24-29.
Okay, well, I have Ephesians. Remember, we talked about the whole armor, right? Book of Ephesians, chapter 6, verse 10. Talks about the whole armor of God, right? The Most High, finally, my brother, and be strong in the Lord. And in the power of his might, put on the whole armor of God, and ye may be able to stand against the wile of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh or blood, but against power, principalities, powers, against the rulers of darkness in this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Wherefore take upon the whole armor of the Most High God, with ye may be able to withstand in the evil day, and have done all to stand. Now, we started that for part one with that scripture in preparation, knowing that this is a spiritual battle. So I just wanted to read that. I know you made mention of it, and we can, conclude our thinking on what is written in ancient texts and even in the sky and in the stars. My good friend, appreciate the lecture, appreciate the information, and well wishes to my good friend Tim and yourself, man. Great conversation today.
Yeah, it's been a blessing. Hey, y'all, expose your gift.